Yeah, this morning I woke up and I thought, wow, I've got a tough act to follow today. We have Gerd, we have Eric, we have Julius today. So then it hit me, how can I stand out? One word, I thought, pink. So obviously it worked a little bit better than I had expected because I see a sea of gray and black here today. Thank you, Oliver and the Deaf, for having me here. I hope you enjoy the content, my take on digital transformation. I wanted to start with a little bit of insight about me. I absolutely love science fiction. I'm a huge fan. It might not look it. I'm actually a sci-fi junkie on the inside. And anything around TV programs, movies, comic books, absolutely loved it ever since I was a kid. Programs like Quantum Leap and Star Trek fed my imagination. And I imagined different types of technologies, clever gadgetries, advanced technologies that we could use. And of course, as a child, I always thought, you know, obviously all of these things were possible. Self-driving cars and self-adjusting clothing, artificial intelligence, robotics, and all of that. So we're actually very blessed, and I feel extremely blessed, to live in a time where these technologies are actually very possible. So any Star Trek fans out there, do you remember the little tricorder, the body biometric tool that they used to use? We've got that today, right? And Terminator, remember the cyborg? We've got that too. Maybe not as destructive, but still quite cool. And if you remember from Total Recall, we had the self-driving cars. Obviously, we've got that as well. And many, many, many more. The rate of development of digital technologies is so massive. Almost on a daily basis, we can read about something new being developed, a new breakthrough, a new technology that's disrupting our lives. And of course, the world we live in today is completely changed. It's changing. And as we heard from Gerd earlier today as well, we live in a totally different world, and it's only going to keep changing, the merging of man and machine. And of course, as predefined by our genetics, people are evolving too and adapting to the changes of technology. We're adopting technology at such a rapid pace, almost as quickly as the technology is being developed. We're taking it on. We're becoming digital beings. We're starting to merge man and machine. We're becoming almost a superior, intelligent, intellectual species, something completely new. Or maybe not. Maybe we're just becoming a generation of digital zombies. Right? This is actually a real term now, digital zombies. Happy to live our lives through our little mobile devices, walking around, taking our selfies and sharing it on cyberspace. Perhaps we're becoming a generation of people just happy to live through the little screen of our mobile devices just as long as we can share it with our 1 million Instagram followers. That's nice. But in reality, what's actually happening and what's relevant for businesses is the fact that digital has triggered a change in behavior. It has created an elite, sophisticated consumer community that's connected, that's sophisticated, that's informed and knowledgeable, that is connected to people throughout the world. And this consumer, as I call it, consumer 2.0, is very, very relevant to our business environment. So we heard a lot today around the future of technology and the possibilities that are coming our way. But how do you translate all of this into our business environment? How does it become a reality for us? How do we capitalize on it for our business? And the key to that is understanding the changes in consumer behavior. Understanding how these new technologies are being used by people, and how the convergence of digital and offline channels actually work. Apart from the consumer change, there's also a myriad of new technologies out there that are very relevant and applicable for our business. A range of different technologies, and again, we heard this morning from Gerd about the futuristic part of technology. the elements of technology that are going to impact our daily lives. But these technologies also impact our daily business because we are essentially people doing business with other people. And if the consumer behavior changes and the availability and accessibility of technology changes, that means our business environment is going to change as well. The question for me is, how much have companies changed? We do hear a lot about digital transformation these days. We hear a lot about large companies collaborating with startups, for example, in the fintech environment. We hear quite a lot of activity going on. But what is actually happening in this environment? How much are companies actually changing and implementing into their business world? One thing that you could do in your business environment is really looking at assessing these digital technologies, right? How much of it actually impacts your business and how much is just a lot of hype? And how much of it is just exploration of technology? Apart from exploring or assessing these technologies against your own business and industry, it's also worthwhile looking at it across the board, across other industries as well, because that's potentially where you find real synergies. For example, autonomous cars obviously have an impact on the transport industry, but it also has a heavy impact on the insurance industry, which typically people see as a very traditional business environment. But if we start thinking about autonomous cars being the norm, that they are going to be actively used in terms of public transport or in terms of people driving it around or being driven around, what happens if an autonomous car actually gets into an accident? Who is liable? What happens if the car is intelligent enough to decide between knocking into a group of students or saving the driver and it chooses to save the driver? Who is liable for something like that? Of course, if you think about the banking industry, there is also an impact because autonomous cars could also be potentially connected cars, which means people could do their banking while they're in the car on the way to work. That creates an impact as well. What kind of services could you offer for people like that? If we think about 3D printing, it definitely has an impact on design. It has an impact on the architecture and development, building, manufacturing. But in the medical industry, people are also starting to apply 3D printing. 3D printed prosthetics, for example. 3D printing of a kidney, which was recently done. Right, so there's lots of potential. What has this created? This change in consumer behavior, this change in technology enabling new types of services and offerings. We're seeing a perfect storm. And this is actually a study from the IMD. It's called the Digital Vortex. And I absolutely love this picture because it really depicts the way industries are being sucked into a digital center, becoming increasingly digitized in their business environment, their operating models, the value chains, and the service and products that they offer. And essentially, industries closer to the center are going to be impacted faster, and industries on the outside impacted at a later time, but still eventually impacted. And the study basically says, in the next 3 to 5 years, 4 out of 10 of every industry, largest companies of every industry in terms of market size are going to be completely disrupted. And we're talking about disruption at a business model level, not just in terms of new products or services coming up. And so what we're also seeing is the development of new business models, digital business models, right? Startups that are coming up with new ways of doing business that capitalize on the way people operate, the way consumers behave, that capitalize on the convergence between the digital and the physical world. And these business models are actually starting to become more sustainable. They're focused on offering customers specifically what they need. And quite a few of them are also being developed by people who are or who were customers themselves, and they were just not satisfied with the products and services available in the market. If you look at things like Airbnb, it was developed by someone who needed something and couldn't get it. He designed his own service and started to offer it. The real challenge for big companies will come when these services are then adopted by the masses, from the average consumer right up to the high net worth individuals. And we have to start taking these things seriously as well. Because if you really look at it, these new business models are starting to make an impact on the markets. Now, this chart actually shows the unicorn startups. Unicorns are basically startup companies that are or have been valuated at more than $1 billion. And you can see on the left side of the screen, over the last 2 years, it's gotten a little bit crowded, right? It's amazing if you really think about it. These are startup companies, fairly new, most of them probably less than 5 years old, being evaluated at more than $1 billion. It's only a matter of time before they start having a huge impact on the bigger companies, the incumbents. Of course, over time, some of these companies may merge, some of them might fall out. Which ones are going to be sustainable in the long term? It's still a question. But I believe that they need to be taken seriously because they're offering something different from what we've seen before. Now, some of you may think this looks very similar to the dot-com era, right? I'm sure all of you remember the dot-com era when the internet was first getting very popular. There were so many new companies being set up based on internet models, internet business models. So what's different here? Why should we take this seriously when obviously the dot-com era hit a bubble and burst? Well, mainly because the dot-com era, the internet companies were based on a technology. They were based on the fact of the internet being popular. Whereas here, what we're looking at is a lot of these companies are based on consumer behavior and consumer needs. They're zooming in on specific needs of the people and offering to that needs and enabling themselves through technology, which makes it easier to set up the company, it makes it more effective, more efficient, and also it allows them to expand their reach globally much faster than traditional companies. So I think there's something to be said here about these companies. So for big companies, I think the time is now. Not just big companies, but any organization that works with the traditional business environment. The time is really now to start thinking about how digital impacts you, and what you can actually do to transform yourself and disrupt yourself before you get disrupted by your external environment. And of course, there is a clear business case for you to do it as well. And this is a study by MIT, which I find quite fascinating as well. They've identified, or they've grouped companies into different areas or different groupings. Digital masters basically being companies that are outstanding in terms of the use of digital technologies. Conservatives are basically companies that are holding back, so they don't adopt technology as quickly as the others. Fashionistas try everything. They basically are open to testing everything, but how much business value they get out of it is still a question. And of course, the beginners, the ones who are kind of saying, where does this apply to me and how does this apply to me? Right? They're really at the beginning of the spectrum. And based on this study, there is a clear financial benefit for digital masters. They are, on average, more effective in their revenue generation, profitability, and market valuation. So there is a reason to start looking at this. And one of the reasons for this is basically digital masters are much better at capitalizing on the digital products. They're much better at using it for business advantage. They're also strong in terms of leadership capabilities, leadership in the companies that have a digital vision, that understand these technologies could be applied for business and how it could be applied. So another thing that I'm a big fan of, apart from science fiction, is strategic, structured, pragmatic approaches to developing solutions. And that's why I created the digital business evolution model. The digital business evolution model, and I call it an evolution model and not a transformation model, simply because transformation implies that there is a starting point and an ending point, and you have something to convert. Whereas what we're really looking at today with the new technologies and the new consumer behaviors is an evolution people are changing, technologies are developing, companies need to change along with that. And it's really a process of evolution. Another thing about this model is it's not technology-based. It is strategic and business-focused. It doesn't focus on any kind of specific technology, but it helps companies to look at how to apply these technologies for their business benefit. So think about it like an iceberg. The access level, the top of the triangle, and a little bit of enable stick out of the water level, and the rest are below the water level. And you can see a little bit more detail here around what elements are involved in each of the levels. We see a lot of activity going on at the top part of the triangle, and access is basically anything to do with external interaction, interacting with your external environment, with your customers, your digital, your consumer journeys, customer journeys, and so on. The enable level basically involves your value propositions, whatever you're offering as a company, products, your services, your key stakeholders and partners, and so on. And of course, at the bottom level, that's where the real business sits. Your operating model, your processes, your governance structures, your information and technology structures, the infrastructure, the physical buildings, and so on. And so what we see is a lot of activity going on at the top. These are the easy catches, though. You know, companies starting to use social media quite actively. Companies starting to modify their physical branches to incorporate some digital elements, things like that. Right? But at the real digital transformation, the real evolution of your business comes when you start to move through the triangle to the bottom sections. Right? That's when you really effect change within your organization. So as an example, I like to use Nike, and I know Eric mentioned Nike earlier. It's a great example of how they've applied digital strategy, and they've actually been able to transform their organization and improve. So they started off very simply because their marketing teams decided to use social media and online communities to interact with their consumers, with the consumer base. And from these interactions, there was also a more demand for more demand for digital products, basically. So what they decided to do was to launch the Nike Plus platform. So that was a shoe platform and a digital device like an iPod, right? And that was quite successful as well. And as a result of these new ways of interacting with consumers and new digital products, they actually realized that consumers were asking for more around digital. And one of the things that were mostly in demand was for customized shoes. So they decided to go ahead and develop customized shoes and offer that to their customers. And the demand for this increased so much that they were now offering mass customization of shoes, which effectively then had to impact their operating model, their process landscape, their technology infrastructure, and so on, the manufacturing processes and everything. And today what they have is the impact has driven through the entire organization. They have redefined the way they offer their products and services. They have a new internal structure called Nike Digital that manages all their innovation and digital implementations. And as a result, they've actually seen real financial benefits come out of that. And we see that as well from their recent, the financial results basically from 2015. Right? There's a clear benefit that they've received from digital. And they're still doing it. The next phase of it now is for them to look at moving away from digital products and offering software for digital tracking. Right? That's their focus for the next years. Another example that I like to use as well is Volvo. Right? Because this is also a different angle. They started at the very bottom of the triangle. And they decided, we want to move away from B2B offerings into B2B2C. We want to create a better relationship with our end customer. And they didn't have that relationship because they were distributing their products, the cars, through car dealers. And so in order to create better relationship with customers without actually cannibalizing their relationship with the car dealers, they had to think about new products and services to offer. And so what they decided to do was, apart from actively using social channels to engage with their customers, social media and online communities, they also then started to look at offering post-sale services to customers. And that included things like remote control for the car, where you can actually control the car's temperature, you can see the car's dashboard via your mobile device. You can even switch on the car, lock the car, and things like that. And of course, they also offered the Volvo on-call option. I don't know how many of you have used that, but if you're in an accident, you can actually, with one click of a button, I think it's pretty convenient. One click of a button, you call for assistance. Or if you have a breakdown, for example. So that's pretty cool, but what happened was these new products and services then created an environment where the interactions with the end customer was developed. So now they had a strong interaction with the consumers directly. And this eventually then affected the entire organization in terms of how they offer their business. So just a final few words to remind you. What can we do to actually stay ahead of digital transformation? What can you as an organization do? I think the first thing would be really to look at monitoring trends, looking at not just the technology trends, but also consumer behavior changes, and how these things then impact your own industry, and how they impact also cross industries, right? Not just looking at your business and your industry, but also cross other industries. And the key to this is really trying to find insights and trying to find a good way to assess and evaluate these new developments. And of course, leadership vision is critical, right? Really looking at what can, as a leader in an organization, what can you do to incorporate more of these new innovative thinking within the company, right? Thinking outside of the box and having a vision for how digital could be applied within your business environment. Or even could be as simple as allowing the teams within your organization the flexibility to explore some of these technologies. And finally, you have, or one of the other elements you have is, I think Eric mentioned this earlier, as one of the true leadership qualities: fail fast, learn fast, succeed faster. And this I find to be one of the most challenging things within a traditional business environment. The fear of failure is seen incredibly negative. Whereas within a startup environment, for example, or an entrepreneurship environment, failure is seen as an element of success, right? It's a critical path that you need to go through in order to succeed. And that's a different mindset altogether. So the flexibility to be able to try things, and if it fails, quickly learn and fix them, and move forward faster, I think is a critical one to have. Then you have developing business cases. And here I work a lot with larger corporations, and we see the traditional business case being developed, right? The advantages, disadvantages, the benefits, costs, and things like that. But here what we're looking for is really a starting point to be able to explore new ideas. And a quick feasibility study that allows you to decide, is this the best option? Is this the maximum result that I'm going to get? Can I test out this technology and see if it works for my business environment? And finally, which I think is most important, stay customer-centric. A lot of times we are so focused on the technology, or we're so focused on our daily business operation, we forget the customer. And this is understanding the new customer journeys. How do digital and physical customer journeys collide? How do they align? What are the changes in consumer behaviors? How does that impact my customer base? What are the potential changes that are going to come in? They should be the center of your digitization or digital strategy, really, the customers. And one of the things that I have learned from watching years and years and years of science fiction movies really is the fact that no matter what technology is applied, it's all about the people. Right? Even if you think about the cool car that they had in Back to the Future, the DeLorean, at the end of the day, you needed someone to drive it, and you needed someone basically to know how to use the technology. And the entire subject matter was around how people adopted to the new eras, the new environments, right? So at the end of the day, no matter what technology you try to apply or what digital strategy you have in your organization, it's really about the people, your customers, your employees, your stakeholders, and how quickly they can help you drive those digital strategies to success. Thank you very much.
Kamales, Lardi, thank you so much for your impressive presentation. I have a few questions for you. First of all, what is really the very first step for a company in the digital transformation journey?
I think there would be two things that I would advise a company to do. Firstly, it would be to understand what are the technologies out there, what's developing, and what the impact could be on your business environment. And the second thing would be really to almost disrupt yourself, to find a way or a process to implement that you can disrupt yourself. One effective way that I typically use with clients is to use the design thinking business model or business model design thinking practice, to try and apply design thinking into your own business environment, not at a technology or innovation level, but really at a business model level, to try and disrupt your own business operations and see how technology could enable new products and services and new ways of working.
Okay, perfect. And how can a large organization with a traditional business model manage the digital disruptions?
I think one of the key challenges a large organization would face would be the culture and the mindset. Mm-hmm. So people tend to also get very preoccupied with daily business. Digital transformation is then seen as kind of a huge effort to implement. It can be, years before a company actually sees any kind of change. And sometimes it can even be paralyzing, where you see implementation of a technology platform in a company taking years, and sometimes the project stops and restarts many times. So one of the key things I would say is make sure that you have a clear understanding what the business goals are you want to achieve with the technology, and really start thinking about applying new concepts like agile thinking and agile business project management to allow you to quickly learn and move forward, even if there is a failure, to quickly learn and move forward in that perspective. And the other thing is really having leadership within the company who have capabilities and understanding for how these technologies could be applied.
Perfect. What is very unique at your digital business model evolution that you have shown us?
I think, well, from my perspective, I might be biased, but I think the model is actually, it's not technology-based, it's actually business-focused. And one of the unique things about it is it's modular. So it doesn't force you to look at your change through your entire organization, but it focuses in and it allows you to implement small sections at a time, which could be helpful as well to convince other business areas in your company, if you have a successful business case or use case in one area, that it could be applied across the board as well.
For sure. Thank you very much for your impressive presentation. Kamales, Lardi, an applause for her.
Thank you.